Hi everyone and welcome to this episode of Soul Seeds where Melissa is my guest expert for today. And Melissa is a holistic coach and a life coach. And the topic we are going to talk about today is finding freedom from the struggle with food. So I would love to know what are some of the less common ways that people, struggle with food?
I think there's a lot of ways. I think that, maybe it's we overeat or we overindulge or we undereat, or maybe we are doing diet after diet, or maybe we're using food to feel good instead of
Mm,
kind of dealing with our feelings.
mm,
Maybe we use food as a reward if we've done something really great and we think we
mm,
deserve something extra.
I'm guilty of
Um,
that.
I think all of us are at some point, right? So I
Yeah.
just think there's so many ways that people struggle with food and we need it to survive. So it makes it
Mhm.
a little tricky.
And where is that balance? Like when is it like appropriate and normal eating pattern and eating behavior, and when does that scale like tip to the other side where it's not healthy anymore?
Yeah, I think the main reason is the why behind the why. Like, why are you turning
Mm,
to food? Are you going to food because you're hungry and your body needs the nourishment and the energy and the nutrition?
okay.
Or are you going to food because you're looking for something else? So I think that why is kind of the answer to where it falls on the scale of being a healthy
Hmm.
relationship or maybe something we need to tweak a little bit.
Mm. And how do we figure that out? Because I know, for like you mentioned, a lot of us like tie our emotions to eating. Like I said, when I want to reward myself, I go out with some friends and have some cake. And so it's a lot related to emotions. So how can we figure that out? There's like a deeper layer behind that.
Yeah, there is a deeper layer. And I think just having this conversation and bringing
Mhm,
awareness to it is really a great way. But then I think to getting curious and maybe
mhm,
asking ourselves, what am I looking for in this moment? And really asking, am I really physically hungry right now? Or am I
mhm,
looking for something else that I'm looking for food to fill? So I think getting curious and becoming aware are two really great starting points.
mm. Yeah, because is it a mental thing? Is it a physical thing? Can it be both? Or
It can absolutely be both. Sometimes we do have a craving that we need to fulfill. I have this little chart I can share with you if it would help that shows like if you're craving chocolate, you might be deficient in this. So there can be a
mm,
physical component, but I think a
okay.
lot of times it's emotional. And we
Mhm,
know that we maybe need something in our lives, whether it's more alone time or more quiet time or more creativity, but we just acknowledge that we have a craving and we
mhm,
associate cravings with food.
because there's like this maybe emotional emptiness inside of us that we're just trying to fill with that food. But how do we get to that deeper layer?
Yeah, I think having a coach come alongside you is really powerful. I have a woman that I worked with who she would find herself when she was stressed out craving cheese and crackers, and she hated cheese and crackers. So I think having somebody come along outside and ask questions, because we discovered through that that when she was a child, every time her family was together and everything was happy and peaceful, there were cheese and crackers.
Oh,
So
right.
she was associating the peace and happiness with the cheese and crackers when
Mm,
really it wasn't about that at all. So that's why she was craving it in that
mm,
time. But I think we get so close to things we can't see. So to have somebody come alongside and kind of ask questions and dig a little deeper can be really helpful.
mm. And what can we do like ourselves from,
Yeah.
say, the safety from our own home? And because I think a lot of people, women especially, can be a bit ashamed to admit that they tie their emotions to food. So how can we like take that power back ourselves and start from our own home?
Yeah, for sure. I think that maybe journaling would be really helpful. Like maybe keeping a log of like, when I felt this way, I went towards this, and that
Mm,
can kind of help us pick up on some patterns. Because when you do something consistently over a while and you step back and look at it, you can identify and kind of figure out, oh, I didn't know that when I was tired, I went for the ice cream. So
mm,
maybe instead of going for the ice cream, I need to take a nap, or I need to let myself rest, or I need to do something to make me get more energy rather than eating the ice cream.
mm. Yeah, I hear that sentence when you say you have a certain craving, oh, just get a glass of water.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a great point because a lot of times a sugar craving can mimic dehydration. So
Right.
if you're dehydrated, your body might think it needs sugar, but really it just needs water. So
Mm.
drinking water
And
and
yeah,
lemon
but
is
when
always a
you
good
mentioned
idea.
that, it doesn't seem that obvious at first, and so it's how do you get to know? that even deeper layer of yourself? Is it about self-worth, self-love, self-care, or what is that layer that is needs to be addressed?
I think it's all of the above. And I think it's giving yourself permission to slow down and get curious. Because I think we are taught a lot of things. Like we've got go on to social and you see all these people telling you to do all these different things in regards to health, and they all
Right.
conflict. And that creates confusion. So I think the key is really to kind of slow down and ask, what do I need? What is my body telling me? What's going on in here?
Mm,
And kind of go on this journey of self discovery. And then
right.
you'll identify the self worth, the self love, the identity that you matter, you're worth taking care of. But I think it's just this beautiful journey of discovery.
Mm. Yeah, because it's fascinating when you actually think deeper about it, that a lot of experiences, social events, a lot of things are tied to food. And so that makes the experience even more tied to your emotions. And well, when you gather with friends and you get a cake or you get snacks, and or when you go to a cinema and you buy popcorn, and there's a lot of experiences that are just so tied to food that we don't even realize that we're doing that, right?
Absolutely. And I think too, it's tricky because with other things that people might have addictions to, let's say, you
Mm,
don't need those, but food you need to survive. So I think it
right.
gets tricky and it's easier to justify, oh, well, I needed that other cookie because XYZ, when really maybe we weren't hungry and we were just filling that void with the cookie instead of
Mm,
figuring out what we really needed.
yeah. And that's like you said, you have to then dig deeper and look, okay, what is that layer behind this craving or behind this? Yeah, because it can turn to an addiction, of course, right?
Absolutely.
And that's when it can lead to more serious issues, both physically and mentally. So before that, you have to take a step back and like almost like a helicopter view on your life and on your habits. And how would you like suggest someone who wants to live a more healthy lifestyle? Where do we start?
Yeah, I love what you just said about having that helicopter view of your lifestyle and your habits. And I think too, one more piece to add to that would be look at what was modeled for you in your
Mm,
childhood in regards to food. A
mm,
lot of us eat lunch at noon because we've been told that that's when we eat lunch instead of
right.
asking if we're hungry or we feel like we need to clean our plate. So I think kind of doing that helicopter view is a great starting point,
Mm,
and getting curious around what are your beliefs around food? What is your relationship like with food? Where does
mm.
that come from? And then do you want to keep doing that?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, eating your plate or emptying your plate, not eating the actual plate, I'm sorry. But emptying your plate, usually that's where your parents step in and say like, hey, you have to eat your plate, you have to be a good girl or a good boy, and eat the meal that's being served to you. And of course, that can also lead to that certain connection with food that's not necessarily very healthy.
Ah, because we're seeking that approval from our parents, so that
Right.
validation. So
Mm.
it's all very interesting when you just stop and kind of look at it a little bit differently.
Yeah, definitely. And see how it's so interwoven in a lot of what we do. Because, when you go out and you have a lunch with your friends and you don't really connect that to what is going on behind that thought and all that eating that you do.
And I think too, those habits are hard to break. I mean, I was telling
Mhm.
somebody else, whenever we would go on family vacations, we would always like get all of this, popcorn and candy and all of these foods that probably didn't have a lot of nutritional value. And
Mhm.
so my association with going on vacation and road trips were those foods. And so it took me a
Mm.
while to realize I can go on vacation without having those foods. I don't need those foods to
Yeah,
make it a vacation, but it's a
right.
lot of work around that.
And the same, of course, with kids and when they get a reward, and usually it's like a sweet snack, and then you're like, oh, you're the good girl or the good boy because you get a chocolate or something.
Yeah, and our schools are doing that. I mean, a
Mm,
lot of places are rewarding kids with food and treats.
right.
And I know the school my kids go to, we have a birthday treat day and we bring in donuts. And I'm like, oh my
Mm.
gosh.
Yeah, sugar high. Woo.
Yep, absolutely. And the teachers love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And what's also fascinating when you think about it even more, like when you go to like the supermarket or a grocery store, and when you wait in line at the cashier and you see all these little snacks, like all the chocolates and the gummies are there that are just easy to grab. And I mean that. that's what they want you to consume, right?
And that's what I used to do. Like that
Mhm.
was how I rewarded myself. Oh my goodness, I made it through the grocery store. My kids didn't have a meltdown, or I got everything I needed. And then I would have the candy bar and I would eat it in the car in peace and quiet.
Right.
It worked.
Yeah, and that's also the same with like when you watch the prices in the food stores, or when you go to like a fast food restaurant. Of course, the prices are a lot more affordable than when you go to somewhere where they have like all these greens and healthy options and the vegan options and so on. So it's really like, okay, they're trying to keep us in this unhealthy state. And we have to take, of course, our responsibility for our own health and say, like, okay, it may be a bit more expensive, but I'm definitely going for this healthier option for my own health because it will benefit me in the end.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we have to do.
Yeah, take our own responsibility for what we put inside our mouth and our
Yeah.
bodies, obviously. Yeah, no, I
Just
agree
nailed it.
totally. But it's fascinating how, like you said, when you look at it in that helicopter view and how interwoven it is into everything in our society, our relationship with food, and how that can be quite distorting and just manipulated from the outside.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much for today. It was enlightening to talk to you. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.